Hey listeners, welcome back to the Grit and Growth podcast. I am your co-host, Justin Simpkins, and with me today is co-host Shane Doan as well. Today is part 2 of our interview with Bernice Doan, Canada's ultimate hockey mom, mother of Canadian hockey legend Shane Doan. Part 1 was a fantastic conversation. We had great feedback from listeners just in regards to how engaged they were with Bernice's insights and the fact that she parented a high-performance athlete all the way to the highest level, Olympic gold, NHL player, numerous award winner. But over and above that, Bernice is kind of like a pretty sweet grandma as well. And so some pretty cool comments about that. If you haven't had a chance yet to listen to episode 1, I would just ask you go back and listen to that before you jump into part 2. In today's second episode, we talked lots about what does a conversation in the car after the game or practice look like in the Doan family, that they're more than just hockey or sport, that these young people are learning about life, billets, and that they can make for a really good or even sometimes a bad experience, the importance of playing multiple sports, but a big one was having chores and how much she felt was really important for child and the development. It talked a little bit and we learned a little bit of the inside of Shane Doan and just having extreme loyalty, his passion, his intensity, mom and dad just encouraging him to stick to his values and what he felt was the right thing. I loved Bernice's advice on learning to enjoy your children. Don't just teach them because then they'll feel like a project, but just really enjoy each other. Shane played a significant role and we learned a little bit more about this, but in the 2004-2005 NHL lockout, a lot of people didn't know, but Shane Doan actually played a significant role in getting the players back from the lockout, and how Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL, even publicly commended Shane on his role in saying that he was the sole reason for saving that season. Lessons on how, you don't deserve respect, you have to earn it. And then we got to talk a little bit, for those of you that might be Maple Leafs fans, just a bit about Shane's current role with the Toronto Maple Leafs. This was an excellent continuation of our conversation with Bernice Doan. My co-host Shane and I hope that you enjoyed Bernice's thoughts and experiences as much as we have, that you can take away some cool stories about Shane Doan's career, but also just what it means to be the mom of a high-performance athlete.
Bernice, can you take me inside? So the ride home from a practice or a game, what that conversation would look like. So I'm guessing if your children are anything like my children, they all three of my boys have very different personalities. Mm-hmm. And as you learn them, you talk to them in different ways. And even for me growing up, my personality, my competitiveness was very different from my brother. And the only two things my dad would say to me after games, because I was extremely hard on myself. If our team lost, it was my fault in my mind, even if I was the best player. And he always asked me 2 questions. He's like, son, did you try your best? And did you have fun? And my answer always was, well, yeah, but then I'd come up with all the reasons why I should have scored 40 points instead of 30, that sort of thing. Yeah. What did those conversations look like on the ride home with all your kids? Like the questions that were asked, the conversations that had. I'm just curious. Yeah. What do those look like?
I can give you one specific that was kind of humorous. Shane was always pretty much the best player on the team. And we come from, like, there's not very many kids around. So one of the things that they had every skill level, from not even hardly being able to skate to somebody who was, and there was a boy on the team that wasn't a very good skater, wasn't a very good player, and the puck came to him and he caught a pass, literally. And Bernie was really encouraging him and praising him. And just a little while later, Shane went down and did not score on a breakaway kind of a thing. So Shane brought it up to his dad. Dad, how come you said that to so-and-so, whatever, and then you got after me? And he said, well, and I remember Bernie saying, well, Daryl did more than what we're expecting and you did less in that particular case. And Shane didn't really like that, but he understood, because they went on to talk about whatever you do it heartily as unto the Lord, and you do your best, as your dad would have said. And having fun was also one of the things that Shane remembers. Is Shane when Bernie was coaching that midget team, these boys, they had asked Bernie as a man to come and coach these boys because they were some pretty talented kids, but they had a bit of a reputation of, being hard on the refs and getting into trouble. And so Bernie made a rule that if you took a retaliatory penalty, you had to miss a shift. And of course, the first person that did it was Shane. And they all looked at Bernie like, what are you going to do now? So he made him sit. And so they discussed that. And then the fun part of it, Shane they get bored with practices and stuff. And so he took a football to practice. And they played football, full gear, ice, no sticks, to make it fun. And then talk about that. And Shane just was so excited. He said, Dad, that was so good. He said, we understood that this isn't just about hockey, that it's about having fun and enjoying one another. Those conversations in the car probably were mostly about character. I don't know what else to say. Bernie would have been the one that said the most. Like, did you learn from that? Yeah, I'm sorry. I know that it isn't. And sometimes you have to say it isn't fair. It isn't fair, but neither is life. And there's going to be hard times. And then there's lots of fun too. You want to talk about the great things. Oh, when you guys did that was so good. Like you did a left-handed layup. Wow, and so it's kind of a mixture.
You got to celebrate some things, right? At the same time, take that moment. Yeah. I have another mom question, and it's from a mom, and so it's as a mom, how do you continue to encourage them in sport while making sure that they know that it's only a small part of who they actually are? And this is this identity piece, right?
Yeah.
That's
well, she said that's a good question, because that's kind of exactly how we would say it. Yeah. This is a sport, but it is a micro, cosm. Is that what you would call it?
Right.
A picture of life, because you win some and you lose some. My favorite saying, my little thing I've said my whole life, is you win or lose by the way you choose. And we used to listen to something. I would suggest this if your children are younger. Find a copy of Pennsylvania, it's called.
Pennsylvania. I remember this.
Yeah. Pennsylvania?
Yeah. We listened to Pennsylvania many, many times in the car. And in it, they make bad choices and good choices. And it was about life. And for them to understand, this is really only a game. And I have to say, it was easier before Shane became a professional, or, to be able to say those things, because you're not going to, you think, well, it's just a game, it's going to be over. In his case, it lasted till he was 41 years old. And he's still a part of it, and it has given him opportunities that he wouldn't have had otherwise. But in life, you have to be willing to see the good and the bad. And for him for that mom to say to her child, I know how much fun this is, and I know how hard this is. It's going to be like that all your life. You probably won't play this particular sport beyond maybe they'll play rec hockey, maybe they'll play men's basketball, maybe they'll play, Bernie played his last seniors 2 years ago. He was 71 years old and played in a seniors hockey tournament, and he did not enjoy him. He did not enjoy himself though, because he said he was too slow. But for those moms, they can use it. I guess use the examples of both the good and the bad.
Right.
This isn't reality that you get to play a game. But on the other hand, it's teaching you stuff that probably nothing else could teach you. I don't think anything else can teach you as much as, I shouldn't even say just sport. I think that if you are interested in science, or you're interested in piano, or you're interested in agriculture, then you should be encouraged to be a part of it in a way that shows you how to develop your character. Like kids who are in 4-H, you know, you do all that work, you feed that calf, you do all the, you groom them, you don't win the prize, and then you have to sell it. When you talk about reality, that's a huge thing. Well, in hockey and in basketball and baseball and all the different sports, those kind of things, you know, 1 minute you're the best. And it's harder when they go away from home. I would say that's probably one of the harder things, because you were, as they say, a big fish in a small pond, and all of a sudden you are a very small fish in a very big pond, and there's nobody there that usually really cares about you as an individual. So that goes back again to the billets. Like for you to be a billet, Shane, would have been a huge part of his life as a family. Because I have seen both sides of it with my brothers. One had great billets and one not so good, and it made a difference.
Yeah, it does. I think that's great. Thanks for answering that. And you're right. It's not just hockey. I think failure, if we can look at failure in the right light, it's such an opportunity for us to learn. And so, you know, if I play a piano right now, I will fail on any song that you ask me to play for you. And so it's again, if I'm training for a recital and I'm making those mistakes, you know, it's recognizing that it's a small part of who I am, but it's a big part of my character. And do I get angry? Do I lash out to my siblings, you know, things like that as a young artist or anything training, right? So it's no different in that. And
I think
so
that
much
is
going
one
on.
thing.
Yeah.
One thing that parents can tell their it helps to have siblings, because when you come home and you've had a really good game and you're all happy and you're doing the things, you know, everybody, that's great. But what if you didn't, and you come home and you're yelling at your little sister, or you're being grouchy, or that is one of the greatest ways that you learn character from sports, because you don't always win and you don't always lose. And you do have to learn that character is the biggest part of life. I think I have 5 books here that I was looking at, and every single one of them is about character. And one of them is who you are when no one is looking. You know, you might be patting yourself on the back and thinking you're really somebody. And then the next game, you know, you really screw up bad and you sit on the bench for a period and you feel like you're a failure. Neither one of them is true. You are who God made you to be, and you want to develop the character that He wants you to have. So.
Right. Yeah. Yes, and we see it so often in competition in sport, even in practice, but in our young athletes and their body language, right? And it's body language is a huge piece of your character, and so it's teaching young athletes just some of that as well, and that's kind of how you're treating other people. But as parents, we can often get lost in the chaos. I just think there's so much going on. We're going different places, and I think you spoke to this a bit about, you know, even how do we, you know, not worry about doing things that get perceived as lesser, because there can be a lot of chaos, and learning how to navigate it. And I know it was a question I had sent to me, but you know, you had somewhat answered, and even in the sense that Shane went to 1 or 2 hockey camps in the summer. It's we looked at it and went, well, we need him in the barn. So in the midst of all the chaos, we're not saying let's throw our kids in front of the television and watch movies all day. It's we're still going to teach the work ethic. We're still going to, you know, keep them active. We're still going to, you know, they're going to be physically active in the sense they're going to train for their sport. I know just from my time out there, I think Bernie kind of laid out the track that Shane would run every day, and it was, you know, it was quite a run, and it was up and down hills. There was a lot in that moment. So again, he had the opportunity to still train and do things there, even though maybe not staying as chaotic busy in the summer or spring. Right.
Yeah. Having my youngest son has 4 children, and they all play hockey, 2 girls and 2 boys, and their schedule is busy. And some people, I think, have that are not involved in sports have been critical to say, you know, well, aren't you too much? And I would say what you said. Well, there aren't, I mean, they do have chores. They have chickens, they raise chickens, and they like for the eggs and stuff like that. And they have dog and cats and, that kind of stuff. But 50 years ago, when you had to stay home and feed the animals or they died, and you had to do all these different things, there isn't a lot of chores in our society for children to do. And sometimes the television, the devices, in my daughter's home, all those phones and when it's time to go to bed or when it's mealtime, they're set up to the side because we can get so crapped almost by that. Whereas when you have to get up and go to practice, or when you haven't been, if you don't eat properly or you sat up all night and played on your phone, and then the next day you have to, be a hockey player and you're tired. Those are things that I can understand now. I'm pretty supportive of people who are willing to put their children into different sports. I understand the cost is also, can be prohibitive in some places, but if you can do something to get your children active physically, emotionally, mentally, if they're like, again, I go back to the pianist. If you have a pianist in your teach them, give them those lessons. Find somebody who's willing to help them. If it's important.
For sure. Or send them to Circle Square Ranch for wrestling, basketball on the concrete floor, some archery, horsemanship. They're going to play, what do we call it again with, we're running through the coulee and trying to hide. I'm trying to remember what that game's called.
Well, there's Capture the Flag is a big one. There's Armageddon is another. Right. I mean, we have a lot of.
I think it was where Bernie was on a horse maybe and trying to get us.
Oh. That was Man Tracker.
Man Tracker, thank you. Yes, they'll be active and and they'll get to work in the dish pit after, which is great.
Exactly.
Shane, go ahead. You had a question there, and I cut you off.
Oh no, yeah. Look at so Shane has a great junior career, moves on to the NHL, and he plays for Phoenix, Arizona. The Coyote. He plays for the Coyotes for a long time. 1 year with the Jets.
Yeah.
And if correct me if I'm wrong, there was probably more challenging seasons with that franchise than not.
Yes.
And
true.
Yeah, yet I see that like Shane plays his entire for a long time. And if I got it right, like that looks like 21, 22 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a ton of commitment to stick with a franchise, especially when you have the reputation and and he did very well. I'm guessing there would have been a lot of suitors for other teams when he was a free agent and such, yet he stuck with the franchise his entire career. How did your role as a parent transition in parenting him as a man now in the NHL as a professional athlete through maybe some of those challenging years?
We got to be Shane was very generous to include us in a lot of things. We got to go to World Championships. We went to the Olympics. We spent time with him and his family, in Phoenix. And one of Shane's endearing qualities is he's very loyal, and he so wanted to see the Coyotes succeed in Phoenix because that's where he lived and he enjoyed it. And it was hard for him because now he had a family as it came time, towards the end of his career where he had more and more opportunities to move on, to make a decision to go someplace else didn't just affect him. It would have affected his family. And that was a big part of it. And he's very, he and his wife spent a lot of time talking and thinking and praying and, wondering what do we do? We get phone calls at different times about different things. And some of them were really interesting. Some of them don't really know what you should do when they had I think it was the last, some people call it a lockout. Some people call it a strike. I'm on the player side, so I call it a lockout. He phoned us at 3 a.m. to say it's done, and So we had talked earlier, and just encouraging him to stay with his values, to stay with what he believed was the right thing. One of the things that Shane is very passionate and very intense in just about anything that he does. If don't play cards with him, because he's very good at it, and he doesn't like to lose, and he doesn't cheat. I'm very, very confirmed in that. But when it came time to make these kind of decisions, he would talk to his dad and say, "Well, Dad, what do you think?" And the scripture was always a huge part of what was being said to him. There was lots of times when I was wishing he would quit, because sometimes it wasn't so fun and so pleasant. And when he was struggling, or when he was hurt, towards the end of his career, I think every year you wonder, do you keep doing this? Do you keep going? And I think personally, as a mom, I think he had another year left, because he was 28 points short of 1,000. And I think that there was something there, but he knew, what others were thinking. And so we did have opportunity to speak. And I would say to parents, it isn't when they're 15. You get to be a part of their lives. And we're so blessed that our kids want us to be a part of their lives. We got to go to France with Leanne, and we with Brooke and his four, you get to be a part of their lives at every aspect. And I almost, with the Coyotes, I almost felt like I was a hockey mom. We got to know everybody. We went back to a game after Shane had finished playing, and just to walk around and talk to all the people who take the tickets, and the guy who ran the elevator, and the equipment guys, and all of that. It was like this was a family that Shane had. I'm very proud of my children. So they bring out the best in the people they're around too. So.
Well, and you just saying that, the fact that your children wanted to call you, still wanted, your opinion mattered, and they were looking for advice even into their adult years. Just makes me, again, for myself and maybe some of our listeners out there, just reinforces like the conversations, those car rides, while, around the supper table matters so much, of just building that trust and that relationship, so that, 10, 15, 20 years from now,
Yes,
we're getting that phone call. We want that phone call. Like, Dad, like, what do you think? That sort of thing. And it's such a gift that I think sometimes we can take for granted when they're younger.
Yeah, it is. The relationship you have with your children is developed when they're children. You can't just ignore it when they're children, and then think that they're going to become, a part of. Because Shane would get the same answer when he'd say, "How come I'm not scoring?" And Shane would say, "Well, you have to back check hard, forecheck hard, finish your checks." Like, those were basics that he was telling him when he was 14. And he was telling him, as far as the hockey side of it, he was telling him the same thing. We now have a grandson who we're so blessed. He wants Bernie to send him send me some scripture, Grandpa, because I know I read the Proverbs and I read this, but I'm not sure where else to really read. And I want to, and so, what a blessing that you have a grandson who wants that. And that came as a result of, when they're younger. And enjoy your children. It is so much fun when we all get together. We all went to Shane's place last year, 19 of us, for Christmas. And we have so much fun. And our grandchildren range in age from 26 to 7. And the kindness and the gentleness, well, not gentle, because we're not.
Say, wait a second.
We'll be playing some rough games or whatever. As you enjoy your children, like you're talking about, your boys, they know that you love them when you enjoy them, and enjoy them in everything that they do. That would be probably one of my biggest advices to parents. Don't just teach them, because then they think that they're a project, but enjoy them, have fun with them. We just had my one of our granddaughters, Leanne's daughter, and her boyfriend here, and we play a game called Super Talk. Highly recommended if you're competitive. It's a game like Trouble, but I say the adult version, but I don't mean an R-rated version. It's you have to think. It's more strategy, and we had so much fun with them. I mean, it was such a pleasure to our grandchildren come and be here, and we enjoy them. So, Shane, I would both of you enjoy your children. That will feed into them the willingness to listen to your advice.
What's the name of that game again? Super Talk?
Super Talk. Super T-O-K. Talk, not talk like as in talk, but T-O-K.
Gotcha. All right.
And it is Shane and Mike Smith played it on the plane enough that they couldn't get people to play them anymore. So
That's so good. There's a lot I look at your son Shane's career, and yes, it spanned 21 or 22 seasons, and that was a part of it. And I suppose he probably would have had those 28 extra points had there not have been 2 lockouts inside of that career. And but if a quick Google search there would give you some insider knowledge on the fact that a lot of people wouldn't know this either, but that Shane played a significant role in getting the players in the season back on in 2012 or 2013, I think it was, in that lockout, and kind of headed up that whole NHLPA, the CBA piece, was the representative, I think, for the players with Gary Bettman and Daly, and I think Bettman himself, had a lot of kind things to say about Shane and his character and how he was able to present the facts or the player side of it and actually get it closed. They said the season would have been lost without Shane Doan. I think it was a quote from Gary Bettman. And so I think, obviously you got a phone call at 3 a.m. I know just from talking to you and knowing you and Bernie, you guys would have been praying through that process with Shane and helping. But I think it's a reminder to me that enjoying our children, staying involved in the right things with our kids, the young age and as they grow, that these life lessons, these skills that they learn to interact with others, to treat them with honor and respect, to be authentic. And like you told, or Bernie told Shane in those dying moments too, to stick to his values. They helped him way more than just in the game of hockey. It's all of a sudden now getting the game of hockey back up and running for the 800 athletes or whatever there are now in the NHL. It helped him in that boardroom setting as well.
Yeah. One of the things that Shane would say made it a little bit easier for him to be quite as strong. One of the issues had to do with pensions for the players, kind of like, contributing or not contributing, and he was too far into it wasn't going to affect him. So he said, when it's not something that you're trying to get for yourself, it's easier to stand up and really be strong. And the fact that he had dealt with Bettman quite a bit when the league owned the team, Shane had learned to be a part of it. And I would say this is me bragging. So when Shane retired, both Gary Bettman and Bill Daly came to his retirement, and they said they never both went to anything. I mean, I'm sure there's other players that they did it for too, but that was, the Coyotes were an insignificant, really part of kind of the team that a lot of people made fun of because they went through so many owners. And Shane, he learned a lot about diplomacy. He learned a lot about how to deal with lots of different situations. One of the things that he said that in an interview that I heard him, he thanked the media for being so kind to him when he retired. He said, you guys could have raked all of us as players over the coals and made fun, but they treated, the media was very kind to him. And so I was very proud of him to know that he recognized those kinds of things. And because he was able to treat others with respect, he was shown the same kind of respect. Shane would say that entitlement is the worst thing that you can do, especially as players. If you think you're entitled, he says you're going to be angry all the time because entitlement is wrong, first of all. but it never ever pays off. And
Mhm.
you don't deserve respect, you earn it. And those are things that he has taught his own children, but I've heard him say those things. I know that he talked to a lot of players and tried to encourage them, and actually is enjoying that side of his job now. Is Brad Tree Living wants him to be as close to the players, so he gets to go on the ice for practice and be a part of that all the time. So
Okay. Yeah. And so for our listeners' sake, to just know, what is Shane up to now? Yeah.
Well, his title, I understand, is he's a special advisor to the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is Brad Tree Living.
Yeah.
And because I said, "Are you an assistant GM?" He said, "No, all the assistant GMs. There's lots of them around the country, I guess, but they all have different portfolios." And Brad would like him to be involved with the players, but he does a lot of looking at young players, and you don't realize what a huge business it is. If you make a trade and you hear about, okay, there's going to be this person you've never heard of, or a second round pick in 2027. That's because you were watching all these young, the kids with the World Juniors and things like that.
Mhm.
So that's what he does. He spends most of his time in Toronto. His family kind of go back and forth with him, and there was nobody there, so that's how we got to spend a week there by ourselves with him, because none of his family was there. So
That is right. And I mean, as an Edmonton Oilers fan myself, I don't dabble a whole lot in what the Maple Leafs are up to, but them hiring Shane, did pique my interest. And there has to be a correlation there with the young stars in the Toronto Maple Leafs. One particularly being from Arizona with an Austin Matthews, and just that connection, and having somebody like Shane being close to the players, teaching them how to be professionals. And I'm making an assumption maybe, but I think it's probably a lot of wisdom in that by Mr. Tree Living to invite Shane to be a part of it, to help mold that team and those young athletes and their character.
Mhm.
And they're doing well.
yeah, Brad was the assistant GM in Phoenix
In
when
Phoenix, right?
Shane was there. So they had a correlation. Their wives went to the same Bible study and stuff like that. And so for him to go there, he did have a connection. He has a even stronger connection with Matthew Nyes, who is now becoming really somebody that everybody's talking about because he's big and strong and, stands in front of the net, which hasn't been, I guess, I don't know much about the Toronto Maple Leafs because I haven't cheered for them since I was like 6 years old. So with my dad, but Matthew is basically the same age as Shane's son and played on the, little league teams with
Right.
Shane's son, and Shane got to be part of the coaching and knowing him. And
Wow.
thankfully, I mean, the Maple Leafs are very blessed that the Coyotes didn't listen to Shane and drafted when he told them they should. And the Maple Leafs got it.
And Maple Leafs, that's right. And now your grandson, Josh,
Yes.
he's off to a career himself, and he was the captain of Arizona State University. Ended up being, was he a first round or a second round draft pick of the Phoenix Coyotes?
Second round, yeah.
I guess, of the Arizona Coyotes at the time. And there's a unique connection now, and not only drafted by the organization that his dad played for, but drafted in the first year, got to play 1 year in that team, and then that team was sold and sent to a new city in a new market, which is the same experience that his father had with the Winnipeg Jets, right? And so now he's Utah.
Yeah, it is different. He actually was up at the beginning of the season. He's playing in Tucson right now,
Okay.
which is, I go back to some of the things you were saying, Shane, about having, these boys coming. And it's been hard for Josh. And he's kind of a product of the fact that hockey is a business. He is one of the only players that that could go up and down without having to clear waivers. Mm-hmm. And if you have a one-way or a two-way contract, so there's so much business. And now when he did get sent down, they weren't doing so great. Now Utah is actually playing really well and doing really well. So it doesn't really matter how good Josh plays right now. When you're playing well, you don't make changes. So
Right.
he's in Utah, and our advice to him has been, I teased him. I said, 2 nights in a row, Josh, I woke up and I'm thinking Josh should shoot more. So I said, this is your grandma's advice. Shoot the next game he had 5 shots. So I don't think it was because of me, but it just little things. So we have a lot of fun with that. Josh is an amazing young man.
As a mom, or even just as a parent, Bernice, what has your perspective changed at all over the years on hockey or as sport, or just as leading now, as with as a grandson, having a grandson in the game at the professional level? Has any of your perspective changed, or has it kind of stayed the same?
I mean, society has changed so much, I guess. But to be really honest, it's not easy being a hockey parent or a sports parent of any kind, because there's times I wish my kids didn't play sports, because I love them so much. I want everything to go right in their lives all the time. I don't want them to have any bad things happen. I want everything to be great. And in sports, that doesn't happen, as it doesn't happen in life. But it saddens me that it costs so much for some of the sports. In talking with my youngest son and him telling me, and I would always say, well, you get secondhand equipment, and which we did. Shane had one pair of brand new things. He had Cooperalls that were given to him by my dad. They were new. That was the only new equipment he had until he got new skates when he went to Kamloops. So the cost, but they tell me now it's the travel is so expensive, and even when it comes to like school sports, even school sports are expensive. So my perspective is probably I feel for the parents that there's a lot more pressure financially, and as you said, Shane, even the perspective of that you have to go away and do something, or you have to be training, and you have to be doing this. That side of it, I feel for parents, but I'm a sports mom. I love to go. I mean, I go and watch my 7-year-old play hockey. He doesn't know how to stop very good yet, so it's kind of fun to watch. But,
Nice. I want to ask a question about, I see some programs do these amazing, dads and moms trips. And did you ever have any opportunity to be a part of a mom's trip with the Coyotes, maybe? No mom's trips there? No.
No mom's trips. I feel sorry for myself, because Bernie's been on 2. He's been on 2 father's trips. They just have started now in the last few years doing the mom's trips. And now I see, I think Edmonton called it a mentors trip. And so some brought their mom, some brought their coach, somebody I think brought their brother or their sister. I think it's great. And you have to give the professional teams acknowledgement. They treat their people really, really well.
Okay.
And so I would have loved to have done that.
Yeah, it looks really great. And so I could imagine, but I know Bernice told me a couple of the trips, and I think one of them was to Madison Square Gardens, which was a bit of a dream of his. And
there was a thing that went viral because there was a big hit, and Bernie was sitting beside a father, and Bernie has a habit of, to get your attention, he kind of hits you or makes a funny move, and they put it on TikTok or something, I guess, because he was, whoa, there's a great
Awesome. You made a lot of pregame meals. And tell, for some of our moms or dads out there that are listening, what was the go-to meal? What did you have, a pregame meal that was maybe Shane's favorite, or Leanne's, or even Brooke's? What did you make a lot of?
Well, Brooke's favorite would have been grilled cheese sandwiches, which probably wasn't necessarily, it didn't have a lot of protein in it. We pretty much ate, a balanced diet all the time. Shane's pregame meal, when he went into the NHL, is a brunch. He would go, and the great thing about it is lots of times his kids got to go with him. He would have a noon meal, and he'd go to a place One was called Good Egg, and when we were with Josh in Calgary just recently, that's what we did for his pregame meal. We went out for brunch. So that's probably, you get your fruit, you get your protein, lots of eggs, and they're big on that. I would say none of our kids ate very close to when they played. Like, if you're having a 7:00 game, they're having brunch at noon or whatever. So I could tell you probably some people weren't very good. Shane played with a guy who spent most of his pregame meals, his mom made him a hot dog. And it wasn't that they couldn't afford to have more, but he liked it. And so that's what his mom gave him. And sadly, his career didn't last very long. I don't know if it was because of that or not.
There's rumors out there that Wayne Gretzky loved hot dogs pre-game or during games. I don't know.
This has been pretty rich for the last this whole interview, and we appreciate you, Bernice. Any thoughts, advice, like anything you'd like to say to the hockey moms, but not just hockey moms, just the moms of young athletes right now, and maybe even parents in general? Is there any parting wisdom from your experience over the last decades that you'd like to say to them?
Well, people asked us, like what was like with our children growing up. We had a bit of a ritual. Like some people probably did a way better job than us, but this was kind of what we did in the mornings. I made their lunches, the kids ate their breakfast, and Bernie read them a devotion, or they had to recite their memory verses that they were learning. And we don't have a whole bunch of verses. Colossians 3:23 is as I said, our family. Whatever you do it heartily. In other words, work hard at it, and you do it as unto the Lord, and don't worry so much about what the people think. That's one of the main ones. Another one that I like to encourage parents is Ephesians 4:32. It says, "Be kind, tender-hearted, forgiving one another." And I think that applies in just about everything in your life, but as parents to children, as children to each other, to your teammates, sometimes it's hard. You have got people that drive you crazy, or they're not kind to you, but if you practice those things, and then as they got older, there's a scripture in Proverbs. It talks about being prudent, and our definition of prudence is to be wise in practical things. And so to be aware of what's going on around you, pay attention to what's going on around you, and the scripture says a prudent person sees danger coming and then is prepared for it. Whereas the simpleton just ignores whatever's happening or the direction that they're going, and then they suffer the consequences. Those are probably three major things that I don't just teach moms, but people in general, and for my own life. I would hope that I could do that to make a difference in my children and now my grandchildren. And as I have a 26-year-old granddaughter, I'm sure will eventually be giving us great grandchildren, which I find amazing to think about. But there's just so much. When our youngest son, Brooke, he's very faithful to phone, usually if he's driving or whatever. And we talk about stuff like that, and we laugh about it. You win or lose by the way you choose, and teaching his children. And I don't drink coffee. I'm not because of I just don't like the taste of it. And I got a mug from my daughter, who also doesn't drink coffee. And she said, "Mom, I saw this, and I know that it seems funny for me to give you a mug, but on the outside of it, it says, 'Mom, I get it now.'" And she has her own children, and she realizes on the inside it says, "P.S. I love you." Love your kids, enjoy them. They're the greatest joy of my life is to be able to, like I said, I wanted in this whole thing to honor God, to honor Bernie, and to not embarrass my children. They know how much I love them. I do tell them regularly, but the things I encourage those, that will ever listen to this, and for the two of you, because you have children, enjoy them. They are literally the gift from God. Shane's name means God's gracious gift. And when he was born, there was a lot of issues. And Bernie said to the doctor, he said, I don't want to lose both of them. And for him to, I wasn't interested in being a mom. I wasn't, you're young, you don't even think about it. But when you get children, your whole lives change. Bernie always says, if you don't have children, that you lack color in your life. So I'm sure there's some dark colors and there's some fun, radiant colors too. So enjoy them.
This has been really good, Bernice. I appreciate just your candor and ability to talk and tell us about your stories and just raising a family and focusing on the score that matters, which has been a topic that's come up on our podcast recently. And I just want to say, and I'll leave you this, and this, and I don't know your children. I don't know Shane either. Because he's in the public spotlight at times, you can read articles and get to have a bit of an understanding of his character, who he is. But I had the opportunity to have a coffee with Darcy Hordichuk, which was your connection in Scottsdale this past year, and we had a great conversation. And hockey and Phoenix was part of that conversation. It came up, and Darcy just said, if Donor's involved, it'll happen again and it'll be successful.
Well,
it was as simple as that. He said people will, and it just, but he said it in such a way that it was just so clear that that Shane has left a lasting imprint on the people of Phoenix and the state of Arizona, that if he's involved, then there's truth behind it, that you can trust it, and that it's going to work out right in a way. And so, and I think, we don't have to go into detail on his involvement prior or anything, but it's, as there's conversation now about a new ownership group and a new team that's now had a conversation with Bettman over Christmas break, maybe, I don't know, maybe 5 years from now, we'll be having a conversation again, or maybe we'll get to be at a hockey game in Phoenix once again in the National Hockey League. So appreciate you and your time that you shared with us here on the podcast today, and blessings on the rest of your week and the 2025 year.
Yeah, same to both of you. Thank you for putting up with me. I am a talker, I know. So
this was excellent, and our listeners, I know, are thrilled to be able to have this as part of our show. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Grit and Growth Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's guest and the answers that they were able to give and the stories they were able to tell. If you did enjoy today's episode, we'd ask that you would just follow or subscribe to our podcast. It does help us get the word out in our message. Thanks again. Have a great day.